Hi, my name is Steve.
And my name is Ty.
Hey Ty, you want to introduce yourself to all the lovely people listening today?
I'm a long-haired old heavy metal fan who also has written some books and TV shows and stuff.
That's a pretty apt way of putting yourself, I do think. So you and I have been Tweety buddies, as Anne calls it, for a long time.
Yeah.
Just hanging out, roasting trolls together.
So I first became aware of your tweets because of Daniel,
Mm-hmm.
who my writing partner, who was aware of what you were doing with Able Gamers because of his wife, who uses some of the devices that your charity has helped develop and or funded or whatever. And so that was how I first found out what you were doing.
Yeah, it had been a wild ride of trying to figure out the right technology for Daniel's wife, and
Yeah.
then going on to probably through Daniel and Chuck, I think is how I saw you tweeting out from the combined account. It took me a long time to figure out that Danny was not just like double voicing on Twitter, and that was actually you controlling that account. And then I was like, oh, you're a different human being. Perfect.
Well, any of three people can use that account because Daniel can use it, I can use it, and our assistant Pat could use it if she wanted to. She has the password, but neither of them ever really do that. So
I got you.
You can't blame them for my bad attitude.
I mean, you could, but then they'd be like, "No, not us." So we start out on these things, I always like to say part of one of the inspirations for this show was inside the actor studio. I love getting to know people away from their projects. Everybody knows you from the Expanse and the TV shows, the books, the Game of Thrones, Telltale project that you did. Like having you be someone who's known in both video games and entertainment. But today we want to get to know a little bit more about Ty. So why don't you bring us back to the beginning? Where did you grow up?
Oh, lots of different places. My parents moved around a lot when I was a kid. They were very religious, very involved in a sort of conservative evangelical religious movement. And because of that, my father moved around a lot to different church groups. He was a pastor or whatever you want to call it. I spent a lot of early teenage years in California.
Yep, and
in Southern California.
How was that for you growing up? Was it fun moving around?
Nothing about my early childhood was fun, so no.
That makes sense.
No, it was not a lot of fun.
Yeah,
it did make me not afraid of new things.
Yep.
Like I have no fear of picking up and moving. If that makes sense, because I learned very early on that once you get to a new place, you'll figure it out in a pretty short amount of time. You'll make new friends. It's fine.
See, I liked that before the show, you literally said, I'm just a guy who's gotten lucky and doesn't have wisdom. And yet in the first 90 seconds, already dropping a completely relatable quote for our audience. And I think there's a lot of people out there who did move a lot and who don't feel comfortable in their local place. Have you found any tricks on how you assimilate to the local environment?
No, I don't have any tricks. I'm very much a go with the flow guy. I don't go anywhere with any expectation of what it's going to be or what I'm going to do when I get there. So when I get to a place, I just sort of look around, see what's going on, and insert myself in wherever I feel like I fit into the social structure.
That makes sense. Yeah. To sort of leap forward into the high school college years, obviously you didn't just come out into the world and be like, I'm gonna write stuff one day. So what did you start out doing?
Yeah, again, lots of different things. I was terrible in high school because I just didn't give a fuck, and I couldn't make myself care. I read a lot, so because I read a lot, I did okay with like tests and things. So I passed all my classes because I did none of the homework and got A's on all the tests, so I averaged it out to a C.
Okay.
And that was fine. I didn't care. I wasn't planning to go to college. I didn't have any big plans for my future. So when I got out of high school, I took my laziness and lackadaisical attitude into the workforce. And as you may guess, didn't make me a huge hit in the workforce.
Not a great fit, yeah.
Not a great fit. No, I was talking to somebody recently telling them I finally found a job that allows me to be as lazy as I am. But yeah, I mean, I did a bunch of stuff. I worked fast food in high school. I I worked at a rock quarry for a while, breaking rocks, which is literally the job you see prisoners doing in old-timey prison movies with the striped shirts and the hammer breaking rocks. I have literally done that job for money.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is some experience.
And a bunch of other random things that I did for short amount of I sold newspaper advertising for a brief amount of time. I worked for a company that made sailboard masts, windsurfing. There's like a mast for the sail. I worked for a company that made that mast. And then I wound up working for a computer company that sold out-of-date software bundled with upgrade packages. Okay. So for a while there, if you had Windows 95, Microsoft would say, you can pay $50 and get a Windows 98 upgrade that you run on Windows 95. And Windows 98 brand new was like $500. So this company would buy up all the old Windows 95 packages for pennies on the dollar. And then they would pay the $50 to get the Windows 98 upgrade. And then they would sell them as a bundle.
Okay.
So you could pay $100 for this bundle, which was way cheaper than the $500 new price tag for Windows 98. And they started a company doing that. I went to work for them for a couple of years in the warehouse. I was the guy packing the boxes and all that. But then it got big enough that we hired a few more employees. And since I was the first guy, they kind of put me in charge.
Okay.
So I wound up being sort of the, warehouse manager, if that means anything when you've got like 4 employees, right?
Fancy title.
But yeah, fancy title. Off the back of that, though, I wound up going to work for a company called Musician's Friend. I don't know if you've ever heard of them.
Tell us.
But they're a mail order company that sells musical gear.
Okay. And
they needed a warehouse supervisor, and it was a much larger company, so I went and applied for that. And because of my experience of being a, quote unquote, the warehouse manager for this other company, I got that job. And I did fairly well there. And then they made me the warehouse manager there. And then I wound up, this is all very long and convoluted, I wound up hanging out with the guys in the IT department. And I was like, oh, I'd much rather be like doing this. And so the guy who ran the IT department said, yeah, you come over and work with us. You could do that. And I didn't know what I was doing, but I came over and started working at the IT department and wound up working in logistics for Musician's Friend, which then led me to going to work for a company called Northgate Computers, which was a white box computer manufacturing company in the operations department. Wound up being the director of operations for that company. And they were in LA. And then when I left LA and moved back to the Northwest, I had worked with some consultants when I was at Northgate. And I went and talked to a consulting company. I said, what you guys do seems interesting, and what I used to do fits in with it. And then I wound up going to work for a consulting company.
Wow.
Technology consulting company. And then me and a bunch of the people who worked for that company hated the owner. So we broke off and started our own technology consulting company that I was one of the founders of. And I did that for a few years. And then my wife decided to go back to college. And the college she wanted to go to was UNM, the University of New Mexico, because they had a really good architecture program. So I quit my job at the consulting company, sold off my part of the company, and moved to New Mexico with her with no plans in mind. I was just going to kind of hang around, and ran into George R.R. Martin, and a friend of his said, you should talk to this guy. He knows a lot about how to run a business, and George's business was getting quite large at that point. And George said, hey, do you want to come work for me and run my business?
Oh, wow.
The not writing part of the business. And so I wound up working for George for like 7 years. Just sort of running the George R. Martin company. I
had no idea he had a company before being a famous writer. Cool.
Well, no, it's all those things that came out of being famous.
Oh, okay.
Because he has companies that make miniatures of his characters. Yep. He has companies that make replica weapons. All those things. It's managing the business relationships with all of those companies that did all of that stuff.
So out of managing 4 guys in a warehouse packing boxes for a rip-off Windows gig, you ended up becoming the director of ops for one of the largest known franchise/writers that has come out of our decade.
Yeah, it was a long, convoluted
that is path. A long path, yeah.
And at no point did I have a plan. None of that was planned. It was just random. It was like I would quit one job and somebody would go, hey, you should go talk to these people over here. They do something kind of like what you used to do. And I'd go talk to them and they'd say, sure, you can come work for us.
Yeah.
And I just kept failing upward, I guess
it's a phrase, yeah.
it's the standard white guy in America story, just failing
It
up.
really kind of is. Although, I have to say, like, that means that you definitely are someone who connects with other people. Sounds like all of your jobs came from knowing somebody and somebody being like, "You're a cool dude." So, has that been sort of something that has carried forward into what you're doing now, where it's connections that matter?
Honestly, though, it was, with very few exceptions, it wasn't connections.
Yeah.
In the case of George, yeah, that was a mutual friend of ours said, "Hey, you should hire this guy." That was unusual. I did a lot of applying for jobs. When I was working for the little software company, I didn't feel like that was going to be a long-term gig for me, so I started looking for something else and wound up driving 3 hours. That was in Portland. I went up driving 3 hours south to a town called Medford because they had put up an employee advertisement saying we're looking for a warehouse supervisor. And I drove down there and I said, "Here's my experience. I could be your warehouse supervisor." Because it just seemed like it was a bigger company. It had more of a future. So, I mean, a lot of it was just, I don't know, doing the next thing. I think that, we talked about not being afraid of uprooting and going somewhere new. I think a lot of people, once they have something, are very afraid of losing the thing that they have.
Yes.
And I've never had that. Like, I've never been afraid of losing what I have. So I've never been afraid of just going and trying to get something else.
I think that gives you an extreme advantage because a lot of us will not let go of the previous branch on the tree until we've got a firm grasp on the next one. And you're very much someone who sounds like you will just be like, that branch looks cool, and then you just jump for it.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. I've always, my whole life, I've just taken a series of leaps of faith.
Yeah.
Just, I wonder what it's like over there, and then just jump over there and see what it's like. And the luck part of this, because, I chalk a lot of this up to luck. The luck part of this is I never landed on a rotten branch and fell to my death.
Yeah.
Because that's always possible. I mean, and you have no control over that. So the fact that didn't happen, you got to chalk that up to luck.
So you say you have no fear of it, probably from your upbringing, but did you have any hesitations in any of this and, wondering the what ifs if something didn't work out? Or did you figure you're just young and scrappy and you'll figure it out?
It's several things. It's that, but it's also my wife and I are very close and always have been. We were friends for a long time before we were married. And we've always had each other's back. So I never worried that if I took a leap of faith and it didn't work out, that it was going to create a problem for her. I never worried about it affecting our relationship, which is a huge help. Mm-hmm. And very early on, she and I decided we weren't really interested in having kids. And I think once you have kids, you get very risk averse, justifiably so. And I don't blame anybody with kids for not wanting to take risks like that. I think that's the way it should be. You should want to sort of have stability to raise your kids in and all that. But because we didn't have that, it didn't matter. Like we always knew that even if everything failed, we could both just go get Burger King jobs and make enough to sort of live and figure it out from there. It never felt like any of these were like potentially like world-ending choices. There was always something you could do.
Sounds like you were very blessed to find a pragmatic partner like yourself, just rooted in it's going to be okay.
Yeah. I mean, we just always sort of trusted in our ability to figure it out if things went wrong. And she's very smart. She's a doctor now. She just finished a PhD in engineering. So she's very, very smart. And so between the two of us, we just always knew we'd figure something out. And again, that's not always justifiable. Sometimes you're going to land on a rotten branch and you're going to fall to your death. So there is a huge luck element to that. But as long as there was anything to hang on to, we figured we could hang on.
Yeah, I think part of that is definitely knowing that you may not fall to your death. You may fall down a couple of levels on the tree. You may have to climb back up. But
right.
I definitely think the leaping is admirable. Would you say you're someone who believes in fate?
No, I don't. I came out of a very religious sort of supernaturalist worldview. Mm-hmm. And at this age, I am a strict materialist naturalist. I don't believe in any of that stuff. I think we're all just bags of chemicals wandering around bumping into stuff. and fate is a story you tell yourself after something happened.
Okay.
Right? It's, to me, I mean, to some degree, biology is, Freud said biology is destiny. To some degree, your biology controls some elements of what you are. I have certain physical things that are true about me that I have no control over. So I guess in some ways you could call that fate, but I don't think there's like a higher supernatural thing handing out fate to people.
Okay. That is definitely one of the things I think we deal with a lot, particularly in the creative world, is people will chalk up whether or not they come up with a great idea with fate. Now, you're someone who has obviously had a lot of good ideas to contribute along the way, both in your solo projects and your collaborations. Has that attitude of just be willing to try things and see what works, how has that really aided you in entertainment biz?
I mean, you just said it. Being willing to try things. I say yes a lot.
That's why you're here. Thank you for that.
I did. Yeah. Well, and thanks for having me. But I say yes a lot, and mostly when it's opportunities. So part of how I moved up in the operations and technology world, because I didn't know anything when I started, was a new piece of software would be, they'd bring in like a new warehouse management software and they'd say, we need somebody to learn how this works. Who wants to learn how this works? I would always raise my hand and be like, I'll give it a try. And then I'd take the book home and I'd read it and I'd come back and I'd play around with it and I'd figure it out. And then somewhere in there, a year later, I'm the expert on the new thing. And then another thing would show up and they go, who wants to figure this out? I go, yeah, I'll give it a try. I'll try that. The whole Expanse thing was because Daniel said, hey, do you want to try writing a book? And I was like, I had never written a book, but I was like, sure, I'll give that a try. Why not? And I think, again, it's that not having that immediate fear reaction.
Yeah.
I think people's fear of failure causes them to not start things.
Absolutely.
And I fail all the time, so it's not like I don't fail. But I'm never afraid of failing. I'm willing to just dive in. And every now and then, I'm just going to slam my face into a wall. And then you pick yourself up and you wipe the blood off and you go, well, I'm not going to do that particular thing again, but I'll try the next thing.
But you learned something along the way. And I think that's...
Well, you learned where the walls are. You learned
where the walls are, yeah, absolutely. Well, talking about learning along the way, what have you so far learned that was something that just didn't work?
I spent 25 years learning the lesson that I am not an office job guy. I had 25 years worth of office jobs. Some of them were very, very good office jobs, the kind of job other people will spend their entire career trying to achieve. Mm-hmm. And I kept trying new things because I kept being unhappy and unfulfilled. Mm-hmm. And what I finally figured out is it's not the specific job. It's that I can't get up at 8 and drive to an office at 9 and sit in an office for 9 hours every day doing whatever and then go home and feel like I'm enjoying my life. Like I can't do that. And, it's a bummer. It took me 25 years to figure that out. But I finally have. Yeah. And I was fortunate enough that there were other things I could do so I don't starve to death in a ditch, which is always a possibility.
That's not a good ending. No, definitely not. No, but I think that there is a great lesson in that for a lot of people, in that sometimes we can chase after things and answers that we can't have. And I think, that's one of the teaching things that I've very much enjoyed in mental health, is that there's something to introspection and there's something to looking at your own life and figuring out what is right for you and what's not, And here's, one of the mental health subjects I'd love for your take on, which is, a lot of people will say that you learn a lot from doing. I think you learn just as much from what you don't want to do or what you don't want to be. What do you think?
I agree with that 100%. I have learned way more from failure than I've ever learned from success. And I think most people do. I think we don't like failure. We don't enjoy it. It hurts. Yeah. But if you're willing to dust yourself off and say, okay, what did I learn from that? That guy just punched me in the face and now I'm laying on the ground bleeding. What did I learn? And what I learned is don't pick a fight with that guy. But that's a good thing to know. That's a good lesson to have learned. And as you go through life, you accumulate those experiences and you wind up laying in the dirt with blood on your face a lot less often because of the lessons that you've learned. And when I meet new people and, we're talking, I'm always much more interested in their stories of failure than their stories of success.
Agreed.
I always want to hear what other people tried to do and couldn't succeed at and why that happened and what they learned from it. Much more interested in that than somebody bragging to me about all the awesome stuff they've done.
Do you have a story that you like to share in those conversations as to one of your great life epiphanies?
I've got a million failure stories.
All
Go
right.
ahead. I'm filled with failure
6-hour
stories.
podcast. Let's go.
I've repeatedly failed. I've been fired from jobs. I mean, it's always weird to me that I meet people who have never been fired. I'm like, what? How is that possible? How have you never been fired? Like, I've been fired. And fired for cause. Fired for being lazy. Fired for goofing off. Fired for not taking the job seriously. And totally justifiably so. But, that taught me, like, I'm not going to be able to do that job. Because if I do that job, I'm going to get fired from that job. Because it will bore the shit out of me. And I'll goof off. And then they'll fire me. And it's good to know that,
Absolutely.
right? And it also taught me that the way that I don't get fired is any new thing that shows up. I'm the guy who raises their hand because it's new. It's like different. It's not the same thing. I've met people who had a 30-year career where they did the same exact thing every day, 5 days a week for 30 years, and then they retired. Like, I don't know how you do that. I honestly don't understand how that's possible. But the reason that I know that I can't be that guy is because I tried to be that guy and I failed and I got fired. Because after 5 days of pressing the same button over and over again for 9 hours, I was like, I got to find something else to do here. So then I'm like looking up funny videos on the internet, and they're like, no, okay, you're not allowed to do that, so you got to go home now.
That's not exactly what you're supposed to do in the middle of the workday. And that lack of fear, again, that is really what I'm hearing is the propelling your success here is that, you're okay with trying something new and realizing that about yourself. And I think there's a lot of people out there who never reach that point. They never reach the point where they know about themselves, what it is that they want to do, or they're just afraid because they need to put food on the table, right? And that's an understandable kind of fear. I think that's why we all have a lot of side hustles, right?
Yeah, and by the way, no judgment on those people.
No, of course not. No.
I think all of us are stumbling through, and like I said, we're just bags of chemicals bumping into stuff. All of us are stumbling through life trying to figure it out. Nobody knows anything. Nobody knows what you're supposed to do or how you're supposed to do it. We sort of succeed sometimes, and then we tell ourselves a story about how that was because we were smart and we figured it out. But the reality is nobody really knows. And if what makes you comfortable, if what makes your life feel right is you go to a safe office job every day and you know that you're going to have the same place to go every day in the same parking spot, doing the same simple tasks, and they're going to give you enough money to live on. You can raise your family and whatever. There's nothing wrong with that. That is a perfectly acceptable way to go through life. So there's no judgments here. I want to make that very clear, that I'm not saying like I figured out some magic thing and I'm better somehow. That is not true.
No.
I failed at a million things until I accidentally found one thing I'm good at. That's not because I'm brilliant. That's just because I failed at so many things. I tripped over a rock and fell face first into the thing I'm good at.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I think, and that's one of the beauties about this podcast. They say that, you're always looking for your quote tribe, Seth Godin, or you're always looking for, people that will connect with you. And I think, the viewers that will either watch or listen to this, they're all looking for little wisdoms, little nuggets of advice. And the feedback I've gotten so far is exactly what I was looking for, was people learning from your mistakes, your successes, how you did things, because I very much believe that there are no stupid questions. That was something that my mom taught me when I was very young. I have SMA, which makes me not physically able to do stuff, which made me just like you, a reader, someone who relied knowledge is power, that kind of thing. And one of the things I learned very on was how to do skills. And what my mom taught me very on was I would acquire a skill, and then I would not understand when somebody else didn't know how to do something. I'd be like, oh, this is easy, but she had to, kind of bring me back in and be like, Steve, not everything is easy. It's easy for you. That doesn't mean it's easy for them. And that is one of the founding principles of what I like to do here. I'm not a show host, I've had some people say some nice things after these interviews. I'm really proud. I've stumped everybody so far. Still have to stump you. I have 30 minutes left to do it. But, it's, I just decided to do it. And that's what I really respect about your story in this case, is that you just tried to do things. Have you had a lot of instances in your life where you've had friends and family who have been stuck in that fear and you've gotten to motivate them into, hey, just do it?
I'm very hesitant to give advice.
Welcome to an
I don't
advice
like
podcast.
giving it. no, but I mean, to people in my
Yeah.
life, I don't like telling other people what to do. Here's the thing is, I'm very comfortable with the idea that I don't know what I'm doing. That I have somehow accidentally stumbled into a situation where I can be what the outside world would consider successful. I've got a little money. I've got a little bit of success. But I'm very comfortable with the idea that I don't know how I did that. That I don't, there's no roadmap. I can't go, well, obviously you just do X, Y, and Z, and then you wind up where I am. Every day I am baffled by where I am. So when somebody says, should I do this or should I do that? My reaction is, man, fuck if I know. Like, I don't even know how I did any of the stuff I'm doing. Like, I don't know how I got here. So I don't know how to help anybody else. And the other thing that I'm afraid of is I go, well, my trick is that I'm just not afraid to do things. And so I try everything. And somebody runs off with that and tries something and fails horribly and ruins their life. And then they come back and they go, what the fuck? Like, why did you tell me to try that thing? It was horrible and I ruined my life. Because I don't have any crystal ball. I don't know the future. And so when somebody's going, I don't know if I should do this or that, man, I'm right there with you. I don't know either. And if you try to tell them what to do, that's the blind leading the blind, right?
Well, it's one of those things where I think you have to try things, and the old saying, about change doesn't happen until the pain of changing is less than the pain of staying the same.
Right.
You have to sort of launch off of there. But you didn't know how to be a writer. You didn't know how to be a producer. Both in the titles you now have. You were a director of operations, which is phenomenal. And I think this is something that you could be proud of in a lot of levels. But I think it's on the people, right? So you have to go out and try things, and I don't think that's up to you to be responsible for someone's failing if they make a try for something,
The times that I have tried to help other people has been to reassure them that they have a backstop.
Yeah.
So when my wife decided to go, she wanted to get an architecture degree. She was 35 years old, not happy. She had been doing volunteer work for most of her life. She had grown increasingly disenfranchised and unhappy with what she was doing, and said, I would like to go get an architecture degree. I'm really into design. I'm really into structure. I'd like to do that. And what I did there was not say, don't be afraid. What I did there is say, go try it. I got your back. I'll cover your back. I'll make sure that even if this fails, I don't think it's going to fail. You're very smart, and I think you're going to succeed. But don't worry about succeeding because we'll be fine. And then when she succeeded and she graduated top of her class, summa cum laude, honors with international distinction, all of the things, right? Mm-hmm. So she blew that program away, which I knew she would, but
she didn't.
Then she didn't know that. And all I could offer her was, don't worry about it. I got your back. And the few times that I've tried to help other people is more that than giving them advice. It's more, give it a shot. If it doesn't work, I got your back. There's a safety net here. That's what I can offer you as a safety net. So go ahead and walk around on the high wire, try some tricks, see if it works. If it doesn't, that's okay. You'll fall into this net. You'll be all right. You can try it again later if you want. That's really more my thing, is to just try to be the helpful guy who doesn't give advice, but make sure that you don't fall and hit your head.
Everybody needs one of those for sure. You mentioned that you feel like you have monochrons of success, which leads to the question, do you yourself think you have hit success?
I mean, certainly compared to, it's always comparative, right? Compared to some people, not at all. I've met Jeff Bezos. Compared to him, I have no success. He has his own space program.
He does.
But I have a lot of friends who are writers, and some of them are struggling to pay the rent. Some of them are struggling to do even just the most basic things to support themselves with their writing. Compared to them, sure, they would love to have all the things that I have. I try not to spend a lot of time obsessing over that. I don't like comparing myself to other people. Mm-hmm. I think it's kind of a waste of time to do that. And it's you either wind up feeling like shit because you're not Jeff Bezos, or you wind up feeling like you're a god because you're not the person who can't pay their rent. And both of those are wrong. Both of those are wrong answers. So I think any version of that where you spend a lot of time comparing your success to whatever the standard in the world is, either answer you get is the wrong answer. So it's just better not to do it.
Life is a marathon, not a race, and it's against yourself, not against others.
Exactly.
So how do you navigate that middle water? There was a lovely friend of mine named Alana Pierce. I don't know if you have met her yet, but she's a writer in the video games industry who's an amazing lady. And she, don't tell her I said that, but she's a cool cat who has 500,000 followers, but she's also in the same place as you are, where she has friends who have more and less, and I would love to hear your thoughts on, how do you kind of navigate those middle waters where you don't want to look too far ahead and make yourself feel bad, and you don't want to look down on anyone else?
I think for me, it's do I have what I need? And what I need is not just, can I afford a big house and a fancy car and eat steak every night? What I mean by what I need is, do I have the things that I need emotionally? One of those things is the ability to help other people. Do I have that? And if you have what you need, I mean, and everybody should have goals, things they're trying to achieve. I'm not saying be automatically satisfied with what you got. What I'm saying is, do you have the things that you need to feel like you're in a good place? Mm-hmm. I absolutely have more than I need to feel like I'm in a good place. I don't have to worry about paying my rent. I don't have to worry about putting food on my table. My wife can take the risks that she's taking with her education and career. She went off to England to get a PhD. I was in a position where I could say, don't worry about it. I got you. Whatever that takes to do that, you have the freedom to do it because I got your back. It was really nice to be in a position to say that. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I have a lot of the things that I need. We were talking about Able Gamers earlier. It's nice when you do a fundraising thing, I can go pop onto the Able Gamers website and I can send some money, because it's a charity that I like, and there's other charities like that I like. It's nice to have the option to do that.
Yeah, it's a privilege for sure.
Yeah, and so in that way, I feel like I have the things that I need. Every moment is its own moment, and I have to live inside of that moment. And in this moment, I feel like things are pretty good.
So what are Ty's goals?
All I want is the love of a good woman, the suffering of my enemies, and a gold-plated rocket car. If I have those three things...
How are you doing on the gold-plated rocket car?
Yeah, I'm really far from the gold-plated rocket car, unfortunately. So I gotta keep working for that. I just keep saying yes. So Daniel, my writing partner, and I, and some other friends of ours who are in the entertainment industry, in the movie and TV industry, they were like, hey, we should start a company to make more stuff that we like making. And I said yes. I was like, yeah, let's give that a try. Let's see how that works. So we're in the process of doing some stuff. We'll see what happens. Nothing is ever guaranteed. Daniel and I have gotten a little notoriety for being able to adapt work. And so people have brought us other projects saying, hey, would you be interested in adapting this? And to some of those things we've said, yes. Yeah, we'll give that a try. We'll see if we can do that. That's pretty much where I'm at, is taking the opportunity to say yes to a bunch of things that seem interesting to me.
That sounds absolutely smart. So when you're talking about adapting these next goals and figuring out what you're going to do next, I would be remiss if I didn't bring up the fact that you are somebody who is at the the halfway point in the marathon of life, and one of the
I'm pretty sure I'm at like the 75% mark.
We're gonna be nice to say 50. For me, one of the things I always get is from the disability side is, man, I want my kid to grow up and do exactly what you do. And much like you, I don't entirely know what the heck that means, because I just sort of ended up saying yes to things just like you did. And, for me, I really want people to follow their own passions. And I, would love to hear your thoughts. Where do you tell someone who's like, man, it is too late for me to do that? It's just, I can't do it.
Well, the line everybody brings up is Grandma Moses started painting it, I don't know, what was it, 70? And painted a bunch of things that are worth millions of dollars now.
True.
I mean, that's obviously that's a good example. Most of us aren't Grandma Moses. But my wife decided to go back to university at 35. She started her undergraduate program at 38. Most of the kids she was in school with were 19. And she graduated with the highest GPA in the program.
Wow.
She got a full ride scholarship to Cambridge University. She graduated from Cambridge University with a PhD in engineering and honors with international distinction. I mean, she finished her PhD when she was 48 years old. I mean, like for a lot of people, they consider like everything they needed to do in life they should have already had done by 48, I guess.
Right.
Like now they're looking for grandkids or whatever, but she just launched a new career. She's 48 years old. Now she can go, work for a consulting company or an engineering firm or teach. She can teach at a university now. She's got a very respected PhD. Here's my feeling is we were talking about the fact that I don't really have a supernatural view of the world. I'm a materialist and naturalist, which means I think when you're dead, you're dead. That means you get one shot at this. So you should do all the stuff you want to do because you're not going to get a do-over. It's not like Mario Brothers. You can't like get extra lives, right? If you're 50 or 60 or even 70 and you go, you know what I've always wanted to do? I've always wanted to do X. You better fucking go do it.
Right.
Because there's no do-over, right? I hope everybody is at least trying to do the things that they want to do with their life. Like at least giving it a try. And maybe you succeed and maybe you fail, but like I want to feel like on my deathbed that I'm sitting there going, yeah, I gave it a shot. I mean, maybe it didn't work or maybe I didn't do all the things I wanted but I don't want to be laying there going, God, I wish I had tried that thing.
Right.
I wonder if I would have succeeded. That's what would keep me awake at night. And so I think if you're a 50-year-old or a 60-year-old and you're looking at your life and going, I didn't do any of the things I wanted to do, that's a great moment to say, what did I want to do? And can I go do those things now?
Absolutely.
And what's stopping you, right?
Yeah, having that fear for sure definitely is one of the biggest stoppers I can think of. And I really feel bad for anyone who doesn't start something because they feel like it's just too late for them. That breaks my heart.
Yeah.
It's always been the thing, and I like to use myself as the example because I'm disabled. I would have loved to have been a fighter pilot. That's something I always idolized, probably thanks to Top Gun and Tom Cruise. But it's something I obviously can't. But there are tons of things that I can do and tons of things that you could do. And, it sounds like now you're moving from writer to, owning a company that's going to produce the next, Marvel universe. So, that's something to be thought about.
Well, here's the thing, though, and you're 100% right. Everything you said is 100% right. We're all trapped in the skin we're in. And you can either spend your time railing at the universe and shaking your fist and going, if only I was taller, I could have been a basketball player. Or if only I like football. I'm 100 pounds too light to play football. I could shake my fist at the universe going, if only I'd been, like 100 pounds more of muscle, I could have played the sport that I love. You can do that, or you can do the stuff you can do, right? And I think every minute you spend shaking your fist at the universe saying, gosh, if only I'd had whatever, I could have done this other thing, is a wasted moment. No matter what position you're in, and the positions vary wildly, as you have pointed out. Everybody's at a different starting block on the race, right? And some people are way the fuck back there, right? And that's not fair, but the universe never said it was going to be fair. The only thing you can do is you can say, I'm starting way the fuck back here. There's no way I can win. But you know what I could try to do? I could try to do this. I could try to succeed at this thing that maybe nobody else will see as success, but I will. I don't know if you're into philosophy, but one of my favorite philosophers is Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor philosopher. His book Meditations is a book I read every couple of years.
Should be required.
And
honestly,
it's a fantastic book. But one of my favorite quotes in there is where he says, no matter how old you are or young you are when you die, everyone who dies loses the same thing, the moment that they're in. Mm-hmm. And what he's saying is, it doesn't matter what your past was or what your future is. The only thing you ever have is this moment right now, the moment you're in. And that really has been sort of my guiding philosophy. So if I'm 70 and I'm like, God, you know what I never did? This other thing. What I'm not going to think about is, well, I'm 70 and maybe I've only got 5 years left. And even if I started doing that thing, I might only get 5 years of doing it. You know what I'll get? I'll get this moment right now of doing it.
Death smiles at us all, but all a man can do is smile back.
All you can do is smile back. Yeah. And why throw away the moment you have right now because of some future thing you're worried about?
I totally agree. My favorite quote from Aurelius was I'm trying to remember exact wordage, but something to the effect of, you shouldn't waste time arguing about what a good man is, be one. And, one of my favorites, because I feel like a lot of us could do a lot better in this world if we'd stop worrying about whether or not we are one and just start being one.
Yeah. Well, and I think the argument about who isn't a good man is based in I don't want to change anything about
Yeah,
myself. What I want to do is I want to change the definition.
right. Yeah. If I
I don't want to change myself. I want to change everyone else's
mm,
definition of good man so that it fits me.
moving the goalposts and validating yourself, because there's so many
Yeah.
times in this world where we will be mean to a service worker or someone who we view as quote unquote beneath us, and we think, well, but I donated $1,000 to charity, so I'm a good human. Well, are you? If you yell at someone who can't do anything for you, are you? So maybe you need to ratchet that back and think about that one more time.
It's funny that you bring that up because my number one definition of what makes a person good or bad, the way I define good or bad, is how do you treat people who are helpless to stop you? If somebody is helpless to stop you, if they are helpless to fight back, the way you treat them is the definition of whether or not you're a good person.
I would agree.
And like you're talking about wait staff, somebody whose job depends on you liking them, somebody's job depends on your satisfaction, they can't fight back. So the way you treat them is how you interact with the universe.
I totally agree with that. There was one time where someone had caught me out with one of my. So I have 24/7 nurses because of the ventilator that I breathe through, and I had been asking for something, and I said, hey, can you do this for me, please? And they were like, sure. And then they went and did the thing, and it was like plugging my ventilator back in. And I had said please, and I had said thank you. And one of my friends was like, why did you thank them for doing something that they're paid to do? I'm like, because they just saved my life. And they're like, isn't that a little
Yeah.
hyperbolic? I'm like, yes, it is. I probably would not have died. You probably would have plugged in the vent, sure. But also, they didn't have to. Like, why wouldn't I be It costs you nothing to be kind.
Yep. It costs you nothing. And it costs you nothing to treat people in the way that they would like to be treated. I actually, it's funny because I was just having this conversation on, you're talking about us meeting on Twitter today about people getting angry that somebody like a trans person or somebody will ask them to use a different pronoun. They get angry about that. Like, what does it cost you to call somebody by the name they asked to be called and by the pronoun they prefer to use? It costs you literally nothing. And it makes them feel good and it makes them happier to be in the world. So for $0, you can buy someone else a tiny piece of happiness. So when you say please and thank you to somebody who's paid to help you, for $0, you bought a little more job satisfaction for that person.
Absolutely.
A little more happiness in their world. Why wouldn't you do that? Why wouldn't you spend $0 to make someone else's life a little better? If you're not willing to spend nothing to make someone's life a little better, what is wrong with you?
Absolutely. I mean,
What?
again, back to earlier, right? The happiness is the quality of your thoughts, right? So,
Yeah.
if you're thinking about other people and trying to make sure that you're not hurting them by your actions, are you not a definition of a good person?
I spend very little time worrying about it because there are some things about me that are terrible.
Yep.
And I'm very aware of those things and I'm very comfortable knowing what they are.
Yep.
I spend very little time worrying about whether I'm a good person or not. What I do is try not to make everyone else around me miserable all the time.
Yes.
So, talking about Greek and Roman philosophers, one of my other favorites he's the guy who said moderation in all things.
Okay.
But his thing was the reason to be good in the world is because by being good in the world, you make your life better. So the reason to treat waiter better is, it's objectively a nice thing to do. But at the same time, the waiter's going to be nice to you too because you've been nice to them. And your life is going to be better. And you're going to feel good about the way you made them feel. And they're going to make you feel good because they're going to appreciate what you did. And if you move through the world making sure everybody around you feels comfortable and as happy as they can be, and you're not being the source of their misery, they're going to feed that back to you. And even if you are completely selfish, and I'm a very selfish man in many ways, even if you're completely selfish, the selfish thing to do is make everyone else around you happy.
Yeah.
Because that all comes back to you. And even if it's for all selfish reasons, you're just going to be eating up all that good vibe coming at you, good energy coming at you. People are going to treat you well. People are going to be nice to you. It's the easiest way to have a happy life is to just treat everybody around you well. And it's so cheap. It's so easy. It costs no money. It costs nothing. And it works 100% of the time. So I don't get why people don't do
I
it.
feel like you couldn't be more right. I often tell people, when you're looking at being a charity worker, charity is the most selfish thing you can possibly do. It is literally you are making yourself feel good because you're helping other people to feel good. And it's one of those things that's funny in life. I think it was Aristotle that said moderation in all things. I'm not sure.
No, but it was the philosophy of even if nothing is a sin,
Yep.
don't be a glutton, because
Right.
if you're a glutton, it makes you uncomfortable.
Yeah.
If you eat too much, it makes you feel sick. Don't be violent, because if you're violent, violence will come back to you and then you'll be hurt. Don't cheat on your wife, because if you cheat on your wife, then your wife will be sad and that will make your life sad.
Right.
That will make your life worse, right? Like basically saying you don't need morals to live a moral life, because human psychology is built around a certain set of a certain behavior set.
Yes.
And if you follow that behavior set, it maximizes the happiness of everyone around you. And by maximizing the happiness of everyone around you, you maximize your personal happiness. So it's basically like the way to be super selfish and also be a good person at the same time.
So the question then becomes, if perfection is the goal of most people in trying things, and that's why they don't want to do them because they're afraid that they will fail, then why do you think that we strive for perfection knowing that reaching it is almost impossible?
I think, and I don't know if this is true or not. This is just wild ass guess, but I think a lot of people spend a lot of emotional energy preparing for critiques from other people.
Okay.
I think even before they finish something, they imagine the ways in which other people are going to attack the thing that they're done, and they're already like preparing their defense. And I think this perfectionism thing, in some cases, is that like I need to make this bulletproof. I need this to be a thing that no one anywhere can ever attack, because I'll feel sad if people attack my work. I'll feel sad if people critique it. And so I have to make it bulletproof. And the reality is nothing is ever bulletproof. There are art critics who hate Picasso. Right. There are writing critics who hate Ursula Le Guin. They're objectively wrong. Those people are stupid. But it's impossible to make a work of art that no one anywhere is going to attack or critique, right? And so that perfectionism, you can fall into the trap of never actually making anything, because your need to make it bulletproof means you can't ever. I think the fear is to put something out in the world and receive any criticism, because that's going to make you feel bad. And so perfectionism becomes a defense mechanism. It becomes a way to keep your thing from ever going out into the world, so that you never have to feel bad about it.
Right. You have to ask yourself, how much control do you really have over other lives versus your own? You can't control. You can only react to things. And in this case, you can't control someone's reaction to your thing that you just put all your time into. And I think, again, we said in the beginning of the show, we stay away from what someone does as their main project. But I think this begs the question of breaking that rule. You are someone who did something that's very high profile, gets thousands and thousands of eyeballs. How do you deal with the criticisms and that non-perfection in everybody's eye?
I mean, if somebody doesn't like what I've done because they just don't like it, it's not the kind of thing that they like, or my implementation of the thing isn't the way they would have done it or the way they prefer their thing to be implemented, that's fine. Look, some people don't like cheeseburgers. I mean, like, it's fine. Like, I'm not going to be angry at somebody because I made a cheeseburger and they go, well, I hate cheeseburgers. Like, okay, I think this is a pretty good cheeseburger, but if you hate cheeseburgers, I'm not going to try to argue you out of that. And that's fine. I have no problem with that. There's a lot of like on the internet, there's like, oh, the people are just haters. Look, if you just trash stuff for the sake of trashing it because you like watching people get angry, you're being a troll and you're trashing stuff other people love so that you can watch people get upset about that. Yeah, you're just an asshole. Don't be an asshole.
Don't
be
a dick. Yeah, Will Wheaton.
But there's nothing wrong with liking some things and not liking other things. I don't like country music. I've had a million people try to explain to me why I'm supposed to like country music. I don't like country music. Even great country music. Now, do I think everybody who likes country music is bad? Do I think people who make country music are bad? I don't. I think there are amazing country musicians. Amazing musicians. Roy Clark is one of the greatest guitar players of all time. Do I own a single record of his? I do not. But I know he's one of the best guitar players of all time. That's fine. Everybody gets to like what they like. I don't like sushi. all of my friends love sushi, you know?
Oh man, it's too bad we have to end the interview. Bye. Love sushi.
And you know what? I am fine with it. Like I will go to sushi restaurants with my friends because I know how much they love it. There's nothing wrong with that. And I'm not going to go back and argue with the sushi chef that he's doing it wrong.
Absolutely.
I'm not going to tell him, I don't like this, so you're doing it wrong. He's doing it right. It's just not a thing I like. There's nothing wrong with that. And I think part of the problem that the internet has created is that we all have to, we feel this need to prove that we're right.
Yes.
And so if I don't like Star Wars, like I do like Star Wars, but like if I'm on the internet and I say, oh, I like Star Wars, and people come like, oh, I love Star Wars, then like this thing where you have to argue with them and explain why they're wrong and make them feel bad for their fandom. Like you should never feel bad for your fandoms unless you're a fan of like, you know, Nazis, then you should feel bad. But nobody should feel bad for their fandoms, and nobody should be trying to make someone else feel bad for their fandoms. And the minute we all kind of figure that out on the internet's going to be a much nicer place.
Let people like things. Like that is, you know, the premier philosophy, I think, for starting out 101 on the internet, which should come with a handbook, honestly. You know, just let people like things and don't try to squash when people are happy, you know.
Yeah.
You know, why do you think that people are so affronted by someone else being happy?
Honestly, I'm not a psychologist or a psychiatrist. I have no training in this at all. Honestly, I think it's because those people are deeply unhappy, and the idea that somebody else might be happy, it feels like they're doing it wrong then. It's like, I've known people like this. I've known people who, because my wife and I are very happy, I have known people who have literally said the words, you guys are just faking it. Nobody's that happy. And I think some people don't want to believe it is possible to be happy, because if it is, then they're doing it wrong, and they don't want to change anything. They don't want to do it right. And so they get joy in making everybody as miserable as they are. I personally know people like that. I know people personally whose greatest joy is making someone else miserable. And to a person, they are miserable people. And I think that's what it is. It's like, I'm miserable. How dare you be happy? I'm going to squash your happiness. So we're all going to live in the mud where I live. I think that's what it is.
Makes sense to me. So what do you say for those people out there who are waiting to create the next big thing and they're afraid of the reactions, you know? What do you say to them to sort of get that same mentality of you of just jump for the branch? You know, we got National Writing Month coming up soon. You're going to do 1 billion podcasts telling writers why they need to write, I'm sure. You know, so what is your advice, although you don't like giving advice, to the people who are making other mediums, not necessarily just writing a book, just creating things?
I mean, if you're doing it because you love it, do it for yourself. If you're doing it for yourself, if you're doing it because it makes you happy if you paint a picture and when you get done, you're like, I love this picture I painted. I loved the process of painting this picture. I feel really good about myself right now. Nobody else's criticism can take that away from you. Or you shouldn't let someone else's criticism take that away from you. And if you're doing it for yourself, you're also not worried about if it's going to be the next big thing. You said people trying to create the next big thing. Do not write a book expecting it to be the next big thing. That is a great way to feel miserable about writing, because most books will not become the next big thing. 99.999% of books do not become the next big thing. That doesn't mean your book is bad. It doesn't mean you failed. It just means most things don't become the next big thing. That's a whole lot of factors that you have no control over. You know, the zeitgeist of the time and what else was popular at that moment. And there's a whole lot of things that go into a thing becoming the next big thing. So don't create something going, I'm creating the next big thing right now. Create it because you're like, I love this thing. Daniel and I wrote Leviathan Wakes for the fun of it. He thought we might, because he already had sold some novels, he thought we might be able to sell it for a few bucks, but not very much. But we didn't write it because we had this grand expectation that it was going to sell, and it was going to sell all these books, and it was going to turn it into a TV show. None of that was the expectation. The expectation was, this is fun to write, so let's write it and have fun doing it, and then we'll see what happens afterwards. And for all the people who are looking to do creative things, do it because you love it. Do it because it's fun. The minute that it's not fun, do something else. And the fun is never about the money. The fun is never about critics. The fun is never about how many stars you have on Amazon. The fun is about, did you enjoy the process? Do you enjoy having done the thing? Do you enjoy the final product? Just do that. You ever watch a 4-year-old finger painting? they paint a dog. It doesn't look at all like a dog, but that 4-year-old had a great time.
Right.
They're thrilled to show you their picture. They're like, "Oh my God, look at my dog!" And you're like, "Hey, that's cool. You painted a dog," and they're so excited about it. Like you need to get back to that childlike version of yourself, where you're so excited that you wrote a book.
Yeah.
And who cares if it looks like a book? Who cares what anybody else says?
I have often wondered what our aversion as a society, particularly American society, that we can't stand mediocrity. Like, if anyone thinks that they are just average or near average, it grinds them to the core. And I've had this conversation with creators, particularly streamers who have thousands of dollars a month in income, thousands of viewers, and they are super sad because they don't have 10,000. And it's
Right.
it's so hard because I understand why you want more. I'm somebody who's very much driven by always never being happy, wanting the next thing. That's one of the things that drives my engine. But at the same time, it's kind of a curse because you're always chasing the wheel. Like I will die never being fully happy. I've come to this realization because I'm that kind of person. And I encourage people not to be like that. Be okay with, if you met the goalpost that you set, you should be happy. Don't let your own mind move it.
Well, let me ask you a question about that. I'm going to analyze you for a second. You say you'll die never being fully happy. But is the pursuit of that next thing the source of your happiness? Because I think maybe rather than being fully happy, maybe the word is being satisfied.
I would agree with that.
Because is pursuing the next level of those things, is that a source of happiness for you?
Yeah, and I think that comes down to one of the great philosophies, which was what is happiness. So I don't think that the mind ever lets us be happy. I think the mind chemically always brings you back down because it doesn't want you to hurt. So it tries to balance you out chemically, and that's always something we fight against. So I think, I think you have been there too. And I actually have a YouTube video about this on my channel, where people are watching this right now. It's all about being famous and getting that thing. I was up on a stage. I received a video game industry awards, and it was amazing. It was awesome, and clapping, and given by one of the great people of our industry. And then I got off stage after feeling so amazing, and I was like, great, what's next? Like, that's that is where it is. And so I think for me, one of the things I try to tell people is to, yes, it's not about the destination, it's the journey, is a very trite saying at this point. We all say it. Do we actually believe it? Who knows? But I feel like there's a lot to be learned from examples like you, and in some ways maybe myself, where it's not about winning the award. It's about, did you enjoy yourself along the way?
For me, at least, and like, I know that I'm a weirdo, and I've known that my whole life. Like, I don't want the things other people want. Generally, I always want weird things, but I have been on stage multiple times. I have received awards. I have been, I was in the second biggest hall multiple times in Comic-Con, thousands of people in the audience cheering and clapping for you. I've been there. Was that more fun than the times when I had 4 or 5 friends around my kitchen table and we were in a really great session of D&D? I don't know that it was.
Right.
So, like, for me, I think there's this idea that scale always equals better, but I don't think it does. And my happiness comes at all scales. Like, if I'm sitting at my kitchen table and there's 4 people hanging out with me and we're playing a game and we're having a great time and everybody's laughing and all that, that's the same high I get being on stage with 2,000 people clapping for something I made. It's the same thing. And the fact that it's 2,000 or 5 is irrelevant to the process. And so I think, for me at least, I don't need to chase the award. I don't need to chase the 2,000 people in the room. I don't need to chase that. I can get that same thing in much smaller ways, and it feels just as good.
Scale doesn't equal happiness. That's a great quote.
And the truth is, if you have enough money to live on, if you have enough money that it pays your rent and it pays for your food, and you have a few little luxuries like a PlayStation or whatever that you enjoy, yeah, you can add another $1 million onto that. Is that going to dramatically change your life? It really doesn't. So once you've gotten the thing that you enjoy, yeah, it can scale up, but I don't know that the scale up comes with an equal amount of joy, right?
It's amazing. What a good philosophy.
To me.
No, it's very apt, and I think it's amazing to talk philosophy with you. It's hard to believe it's already been an hour and 15, possibly my longest interview yet, but you have such great... For somebody who said, I don't have anything fun to say, I'm just a lucky guy who got here, you have some great views on life.
I talk too much.
You have
I do. I talk too much. I admit it.
Not even close. But I'm not letting you off the hook yet, because in true, inside the actor's studio, we must do the ending questions. So these questions are 10 rapid-fire questions that are going to ramp from super easy to making you think. And I am not going to interject at all. You can answer whatever you want, and we'll see what you can do. All right? Ready? Here we go. What is your favorite color?
Probably blue or black.
What's your least favorite color?
Like puke green.
What's the best thing you've ever tasted?
Sesame beef at Marco Polo's in Portland. The restaurant doesn't exist anymore. You're not going to be able to get it, all you people listening. But the sesame beef at Marco Polo's was the best food I have ever eaten.
Oh, so it sounds like our loss. What's the worst thing you've ever tasted?
One time I swallowed a moth. They're very bitter, and I could feel it moving around in my mouth and throat as it went down my throat. Yeah, that was the worst thing ever.
Okay, you win on the person who's given the best answer for that. This is an obvious one for you. Have you ever loved?
I have. I've been in love with the same woman for my entire life.
Have you ever hurt somebody?
Yes. Both physically and emotionally, yes. More than I would care to remember.
What can somebody do to earn your trust?
I start out trusting people, but it's very easy to lose my trust.
Leads to the next question. What can somebody do to lose your trust?
Make it clear that my emotional and physical safety is not a factor for them.
If someone spoke to you the way that you speak to yourself when no one else is around, would you be friends with them?
Yeah, I absolutely would, because I'm very honest with myself. And I like honest people. So, yeah, I would be friends with that person.
If you died tomorrow, what do you hope people remember you for?
I was a good husband.
Do you have a personal life philosophy that you would attribute to getting you where you are today?
Yeah, I mean, don't be afraid to take risks. When opportunity knocks, open the door and say yes.
Good answer. Do you believe, Ty, that some things are better left unsaid?
Absolutely.
And that's where we end it for tonight. Thank you so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure and honor talking philosophy with you.